Awesome. Dave, it's so great to see you today on this Friday. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Deidre. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I've been anticipating this conversation since we first spoke. It's um, a conversation that I haven't been in before in regards to someone sharing, and particularly a white male chief information security officer sharing their journey of building diverse teams and how it happened and where you got. So I'm super excited to be here. I know that anybody that's listening is also going to be listening to hear our advice. And so, Dave and I met everybody doing business together and having the conversation of diversity and inclusion, and then he shared his story, and I thought, this is a story I'd like you all to hear. There's so many wonderful lessons, and he's super willing to be transparent and vulnerable. So it's awesome. And he's super successful in his role because of this journey. So Dave, on that note, share with us your journey in leadership that took you into really caring about diversity and inclusion.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I think that like many people growing up in the IT community, in the technical and technology world, in the early stages of my career, it was not on my radar to think much about diversity, just being cognizant that there weren't a lot of women, there weren't a lot of people of color, there weren't a lot of diverse elements to our workforce in the different companies that I worked on very early in my career. And coming into banking was interesting because we had a dividing line in the bank. You looked at the banking as a business, and you saw a lot of very successful, diverse leaders, women and other groups. And we didn't have that in our technology practice. We had a lot, especially when we got to cybersecurity, but that was later in my career. Starting in the technology group, there were a lot of people, a lot of white male people in the space. And we didn't recognize, I think at the time, going back now 10 years, 7 years ago, it was spoken about, but we didn't, at least speaking for myself initially, understand the power that we were leaving on the table with this. And over time, the realization for me was forming good, close friendships with a variety of people that could mentor me and open my eyes to that. And helping me to see that I needed to be proactive and think about this as a priority. There is a social responsibility element of it, but there's also an element of what's good for the firm and what's good for your immediate short-term goals. And those are not in any way incompatible. And so my journey from taking this on and recognizing it as something that we should be doing and understanding the business value of that really came in a moment of difficulty where we had a team in cybersecurity, as I was asked to become the Chief Information Security Officer at Zions 3 years ago, where the team was not diverse. There was not a lot of great representation of different viewpoints and different backgrounds, and male versus female was not a good ratio. And especially on our management team, we had 0 female leadership, and the team was not performing well. And this was not against any individual member of the management team, all very strong and capable people, but we weren't achieving the goals, the business goals and the regulatory requirements and other things that we had for our bank. And recognizing that I could open the door to some thinking about things that were different than what the cybersecurity team to that point had thought about, and tapping some talent that I had worked with in the past that at the time I wasn't consciously thinking, well, the reason these women leaders are so successful is because there's diversity of background, there's diversity of thought. I just knew them as really highly capable leaders in our company that did not have a cybersecurity background, but could bring them in. And immediately we began to see some things that needed some changing, and leaders would come, as we got a couple of female managers on our team, they'd come into my office and say, hey, we need to change the way we're thinking about some things. And so that was the genesis of the change. And I'd love to unpack it further in whatever direction you'd like to go.
Yeah, totally. I love it. And I know anybody listening knows exactly why, Dave is so awesome. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There is a social responsibility in that any one of us could be born any gender. And therefore, why wouldn't we want to treat everybody the same? And I really appreciate that. And one of the reasons why I adore you. And number two is that, and I'm taking notes over here when you see me turn my head a little bit here. You also said that, that the performance was a big piece of this, meaning the performance of the department, and looking at it, and saying, well, the rest of the org's got, a lot more diversity. Could that be it? And tell us about that experience. Was it you mentioned a mentor? So tell us the experience of you've got a team, great individuals, not performing. What do I do? What do I do? And then how that ties into you finding the value, finding this diversity value.
Yeah, my own personal journey predated that moment of crisis. That was really, I would say, my first opportunity to put some things in action that I had learned and that maybe had been shown me a few times, but maybe I didn't take the bait, or maybe I was just not far enough along in my own management journey to truly apply that. But I have had a couple of significant leaders that have been mentors to me in this space. One was our former chief technology officer, who moved from our bank to another bank several years ago, but I was in a direct reporting relationship with her for several years. And she was a true champion of this work and really inculcated in me a desire to move the ball forward. And to understand how we can get better performing teams and better doing what's right in this space, right? And she's gone on to do great work at the other institution where she is now. And then our current Chief Information Security Officer, whom I also work directly, our Chief Information Officer, whom I work directly for, she is also a major champion of this in our organization. And for me, the connection was having an opportunity to apply what they've been teaching me and to consult with them both before and during this moment of difficulty to say, how do we do it? What are the things we should look out for? And to be humble and recognize that some of the activities and approaches that I personally had leading up to this, going back 7, 5, even 4 years ago, were not helpful, not in the sense that I was working against what needed to be done, but I was not proactive and I was not thinking about things in a way that was helpful. My mindset was a little more closed. I was very execution focused. Here's the results, do whatever it takes to get those results for the team and for the company.
Right.
And that led to lower outcomes, right? And having my mind broadened through these mentorship relationships was really important.
Right. Isn't that the truth? Meaning, we've been talking and having these trainings. You and I are of similar age. We're 20 plus years career, mm-hmm. and we've been to, and we know that our peers have been to trainings and certainly spoken to about this prior to it being such a conscious conversation now. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And when I hear you speak, I think, yeah, what happened? How come those messages didn't really land such that it wasn't until later that you were able to act upon what you heard? And the first thing that came to my mind is, well, the culture of the whole organization, like you just said, there's these two powerful women above you too, who are making it a priority at the organization. And so it gave you, it's in the conversation of the company. It's all around you. So of course it's, going to wake up more of the senses to do something now that you're back out of the training.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Do you think when you think back at how long it takes, from these trainings?
Yeah. I mean, the training is important because it plants a seed, but it does take a little time for that seed to grow. The worst thing you can do is have a training and then have no connection, nothing for anybody to grab onto going out of that, right? And so these things do take time. They don't turn on a dime. But the more you talk about it and the more it is present in what you are doing and you prioritize it, sometimes the priorities are, hey, we got to make money. We've got coronavirus. What are we going to do? Oh my goodness. And cybersecurity, that is magnified. There's always some, advanced persistent threat we're targeting, or some great new ransomware novel thing that we have to track down. And the temptation is to say, I don't have time for this soft stuff. I've just got to dive in on the nuts and bolts of, making sure our board is comfortable with our program and all these other things. But the moment for me was, I am not going to be successful in all these urgent things unless I go back and apply what is being talked about here and make that connection in my brain and consciously approach it that way and stop thinking about it as, my journey 5 years ago was, yeah, I recognize this is important, but I've got these other things. And literally putting that word "but" out of my mind and saying, I've got all these recognition that this is an important thing and it can help me. So doing that word swap mentally is just critical.
Oh my gosh. I mean, "but" is on my list of 5 words to eliminate from your vocabulary, because it's actually it's not a true statement that you care about this. If you say, I care about this, but I've got blah, blah, blah. It's actually not. The word "but" negates the original statement.
Yes.
In English language, it does. You're right. We were taught that. It is truly, a business need. Meaning what I'm hearing a lot about is diversity of thought. You've said it a few times, right? Meaning the performance is predicated on attackers of all diversities.
Yeah.
Like our attackers are attacking us from all types of backgrounds. And so if we don't have diversity of thought through diversity of backgrounds, then how could we possibly think like our attackers in terms of a whole entity, which we need to do, right? Like we need to think about that. And I think about that a lot. And so hearing you say, the underperformance wasn't a technical problem. It was the team dynamics of thought and how they're able to play off each other and work off each other to think about things that haven't been thought about before.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. There is so much to that concept. A team with diversity of background, diversity of thought, diversity of approach is going to, you drop that team into any given situation and they are going to perform better because they will not be trapped in this groupthink of, well, there's 5 of us, we've had similar experiences, we've had similar training, we hold similar backgrounds, and we're going to all approach it this way. Everybody agrees and we go. You need that person saying, wait a minute, what if we solicited the feedback of so-and-so? And the natural inclination is to say, no, that's not compatible with my view of how we handle these situations. My view is we go. And as a manager, as a leader in an organization, regardless of whether it's cyber or not, but it's particularly poignant to cyber, if you don't take that moment and say, I don't know everything, my worldview is X, low double-digit percentage of what we need. And I've got 80% on a 5-person team that I need to elicit here. And having diversity helps you do that because you will have a check. And that check will be, can we think about these things differently? Can we approach them differently? And having a diverse group of managers with, whether it's male, female, whether it's other attributes, they're so important because they help us to make sure we're thinking about any given problem in the best possible way.
Right. We can look at a problem in every view possible, the more diversity we have, because we only know what we've already seen or imagined. And depending on our backgrounds, our meaning our race, right, our ethnicity, our age, and our gender, depending on the combination of all three of those, we have very different perspectives. Even though we know an apple's an apple, very different perspectives can be had on what that apple's journey has been to get there, what is it used for, why does it matter, value of the apple, to so many different degrees. And when we're talking about business or teamwork, and certainly cyber protecting, where again the attackers are diverse, totally diverse.
Yes.
It is it's a national security issue to not think this way, as far as I'm concerned. And I want everybody to understand that that's truly, beyond the social responsibility that every human wants to be a part of having a great job and a good career, and they ought to be sold on they can do whatever they want to do, and every job's possible for anybody, and check them all out and then go do the work to get it, and don't discourage man or woman to any job. Beyond that, in terms of having a society that's happier than not, really requires people to want to work together, to want to incorporate all types of backgrounds. And so I'm hoping that between, the stock market valuing it, business, boards valuing diversity because they get the financial connection, is just more success, more happiness, better teams that stick together, teams that really like working with each other, even vendor to vendor, like you and I, right? Like, and not almost all my clients, like I enjoy them. And the fact that we can do that and do business. So, who wouldn't want that? And so we must teach it. And I think that one of the things I'd like to tell our audience today out of this is to understand the importance of not just diversity, but certainly understanding it at the level we're talking about, which is your attackers are diverse.
Yeah, and one tactical thought about organizational that occurred to me while you were thinking, based on our own experience with rebuilding our team over the last 3 years. If your cybersecurity team has this difficulty connecting with the business, and when I started as the CISO several years ago, one quote from a business leader stuck out to me. He said, "Your team is a black box. All I get out of it is yes and no, and it's almost always no." And from that perspective, if you are in a leadership position in an organization, especially in cybersecurity, and you encounter that moment, that is the flashing red button on your dashboard, that you are not getting enough diversity of thought, enough emotional intelligence, enough of these attributes that a balanced and diverse group of leaders will bring you. You are that group of, everybody looks at the map and says, we know where we're going, go. And the answer is no. And then we're on to the next thing, right? So as I speak with peers, that frequently shows up. And if you take some self-reflection on that, and you have had that difficulty in the past, this is a way out of it.
That's right. And that emotional intelligence is the ability to communicate in a way that helps somebody else out, that's win-win. And if you really have to say no, doing it in a way such that they understand and that they get it and they like the no and they're with the no, and that used to be a sales skill. I came up through sales, and I spent every day for 15 years either in a meeting or giving a meeting when I walked into working for those founders that I stuck with for 21 years. I mean, they got the importance of training every day on how do we talk to each other, how do we interact with each other, how do we do our jobs, whatever it is, but it was all communication skills stuff. Right.
Yep.
And, unfortunately, everybody thought we don't need to give that to anybody else. And so while it does seem to be that maybe women tend to have that skill set a little bit more, already there for us, the reality is everybody needs that kind of training, and we must invest in the leadership leadership must invest in giving that training. It is just as important as the hard skills, if you will, the regulatory skills, if you will, that have to be learned. And without them, people will be left behind, because
Yes.
it's what everybody wants. And that's, when we first spoke, I said, oh my gosh, you're making me think of the coal miners and, when my age, I got to see, I was old enough, experienced enough to understand what happens, certainly in history, when a new industry is born and another industry doesn't have that business anymore, and what happens, without having jobs to feel valued and get involved in. And it just bummed me out, because I see that as EQ in tech, and so we can't let that happen. We're not going to let that happen, which is also one of the reasons why I like doing these types of recordings, is to, again, help everybody understand what we're talking about. And really it's communication skills, in such that you're able to provide win-win communication, both digitally, visually, have empathy, care about others, really get that what teamwork brings to the world of, everybody feeling valued and respected. And so this is just as important, if not more. I think at this point, we've already seen that the studies show that it's more important, right? Because we work together with such large teams, so much interaction. And I really love that you shared that was your challenge, and so we also want to get education for everybody on this, and diversity of thought in cyber is more important, now than ever, considering that we all realize that our attackers are diverse. So
yes,
this is super important to share with everybody, and I've really enjoyed the conversation and your willingness to share with the world your journey of both wanting to be a performer and also, socially caring. And I'm sure it's a lot of fun to work in your department and with your company.
We do have a lot of fun. And thank you so much for the opportunity to dive into some of these things. We're all on a journey. And so I continue to learn every day on these topics. And we've been talking a lot about leadership, and how what you do in one group of small leaders might flow through your organization, but all these principles apply at whatever scale or type of team you're seeking to build. And so we're really seeking to build that out across our organization, and it's a journey. We're early in the journey, right? But we look forward to getting there and not being left behind like the fossil fuels, right? Being able to pivot and enable the business and the outcomes that we want to see.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say you're early, because I remember when we first met, that's one of the things that just tickled me, in that, you had 3 out of 10 of your, executives in your, all, or your directors and what have you. And, that's higher than I see just about everywhere. And yet I know you're working to, of course, make that equal, and which is super cool. It also just goes to show that, it really isn't about settling. It's really
no,
never about settling. So you're at, you're, the average is 10% and you're at 30. You could be like, I'm doing really good, and yet you're continuing to go. And I really want to say this again, because I really do think about, and have conversations with men that get upset at this conversation out in the industry, and I'm always willing to take that conversation. It isn't a lot, but it's enough, and it matters to me. This isn't about replacing people. We are short 500,000 people in cyber right now, just in the US. Worldwide, yes. 2.5. It's a world economy. It's only going to become more, considering IoT is everything. And so really, truly, this isn't about one or the other. It's about developing teams that have diversity of thought, such that they're the highest producing, team that they can be in protecting, or in, any department, but certainly in protecting, but any department, as you've said. And so really, truly, this isn't a gender versus gender. This is really about us all sticking together and working more diverse so that we can have better thought. And yet it is true that women tend to have higher sort of empathy and some of the emotional intelligence. And so we must look at recognizing that we all need that training and women need it too. And so let's go invest in that, everybody. And on that note, we'll keep checking in with David and see how he's doing. And we'll keep making sure he understands he's a leader out there on this, and we're putting him up on a pedestal. So thank you so much. I'm serious. And the women you work for, please send them my gratitude, and certainly the entire organization. Very thankful.
Well, much appreciated. Thank you again for the time today. This is such an important message, and I've really enjoyed our conversation and the opportunity to go through these issues. And thanks again for all you're doing for the cyber community.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.
Okay.